Hello, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is David, and today we have a Friday Reads as kind of a catch up on what I've been reading. I've read a ton of stuff in the last couple months, and I've done terrible about keeping up with it on communicating to all of you what I've been reading. So I figured I'd take some time and update you on some of the more recent ones I finished, as well as all of the ones I'm currently in the middle of. And there's a lot in both categories. So let's just get started. So the first one is the one of two I can't hold up, and that's Prisoner of Zenda. This was the pick for Michael K. Vaughan in Roger's Cheapold Book Club, and it was fantastic. Really, really enjoyable. And a tale of somebody taking the place of somebody else, filling as body double, essentially. And all sorts of fun, heroics, theatrics, intrigue ensues because of it. They're trying to keep things under wrap that the king is missing, so to speak, and is incapable of stepping in. And funnily enough, the book I finished today, I listened to this one, and I didn't know going in, but I believe this is pretty heavily inspired by Prisoner of Zenda. That is Double Star by Robert Heinlein. Let's see. It is. It doesn't mention anywhere on the back that it is, but this, funnily enough, is Prisoner of Zenda in space. Essentially, same kind of premise. A king has been kidnapped. So people close to him find a person that's capable of playing a part. So that's where the double star comes in. They find an actor who's really able to get into the role and able to, doctor themselves up to look, act, walk like, talk like the person that's missing while he's missing. And then once he's been found, he's incapacitated. So there's a lot of going on, and you get inside the head of this actor who really thinks a lot of himself and is a really good actor by all accounts, based on what everybody else is able to say about him. So this was an interesting one to do shortly after Prisoner of Zenda, because I can definitely see the influences that Prisoner of Zenda could have had on this. This is almost like it pays homage to Prisoner of Zenda and does so in a delightful way. I have a fair number of Heinlein on my shelf that I need to get around to, which is why, I was looking at them. I'm like, okay, well, let's pick one of these and see if there's a LibriVox recording or something that I could listen to through YouTube. And there was. And so I absolutely enjoyed this. And I strongly recommend any of you that enjoyed Prisoner of Zenda for last month's reading. This would make a great additional read. I know it's not in Michael's list of the books for this year, but this would be a great one to add to your TBR and get around to soon, if that's still fresh in your mind. The other one that I can't hold up is one that I got as a NetGalley arc. The process of reading and writing a review for Open Letters Review got me looking at starting another NetGalley. And so I threw out, I think, 4 requests. 3 of the 4 came through. And the one that was coming out in March, I got around to. The other 2 don't come out until May. And this was The Dispatcher, Travel by Bullet by John Scalzi. I begged it, obviously, for the Scalzi name. Apparently, this is the 3rd book in a series. I don't think that I really missed much other than character developments by jumping in. It pretty quickly establishes what's going on. The main character is what's known as a dispatcher. And this is a world where these specialists are able to essentially legally go around and kill somebody that wants to be killed. And when somebody dies, if they're dispatched properly by a dispatcher, they will come back into the safest place. Their idea of what is a safe place, with no clothing, no items, but they'll be exactly as they were 24 hours before. So, if you fell and broke your leg, hiking on a mountain and somebody finds you 3 days later, well, the dispatcher can't really take you back in there. Like, you'll be somewhere safer, but you'll still have that broken leg. And so it's not able to cure, things like terminal illnesses or anything like that. But, you get into a car accident, you get messed up really bad. The dispatcher is there and you're back as good as new. So, interesting premise, interesting story, as I expect with Scalzi, littered with, humor that is in his style. Pretty well paced. I think it's probably more of a novella or novelette, probably around 200 pages or so, which is on the short side, kind of like Kaiju Preservation Society, which I read last year and enjoyed quite a bit. I think I enjoyed Kaiju Preservation Society more than this one, but it was still an enjoyable and quick and easy read. I read Gulliver of Mars, which is kind of a forebearer for Edgar Rice Burroughs, and you can tell. You can, or I don't know, was this before or after? But it is definitely one of those where, okay, yeah, this came out in 1905. So this is a forebearer to Edgar Rice Burroughs, and you can tell. This has got everything you would expect from a Burroughs novel, but not done as well as Burroughs would have done it. Which, there's nothing wrong with that. It was still a very enjoyable read, very worthwhile. I'm glad that inspired the Tarzan and the Barsoom series, because I love those series, not as much as Michael K. Vaughan. I don't think anybody that's alive right now loves them as much as he does, but I enjoy them quite a bit. And so it was fun going and checking this one out. So we have two kind of disappointments that I've finished recently. One is Alice in Wonderland by Harlan Ellison. And this was a disappointment because none of the stories in here felt extraordinary to me. It's a collection of short stories. The premise in here is 15 excursions into the fantastic universe of Alice in Wonderland. So I interpreted that as being kind of more fantasy based, and there is a little bit of fantasy, but most of it's still sci-fi, which that was an early jarring preconception to have shaken, but as a whole, I mean, the stories in here were all fine. None of them were bad, but none of them were great, which was surprising. And I knew, looking at the table of contents, none of them were the well-known stories, so I knew it wasn't going to have any of the best of the best. But this is one that I was surprisingly disappointed by. On the flip side, Ray Bradbury, I'm yet to run into a collection of his short stories that doesn't at least have some that are just phenomenal that I'll be thinking about later. I didn't have any with this. So that was kind of a disappointment. And if I had another Harlan Ellison, I've got a tour double. So I've got one more thing of Ellison on my shelf to read. But I kind of wish I had something that I knew would redeem it, like Firebird stories or anything that has some of his better known works in it. Because I need to get that bad taste out of the mouth and get Harlan back on the right foot. But, that'll come in time. Then I read XMen Universe Civil War, which is a very thin volume. And so I picked it up because I had looked and I was like, okay, it's 5 issues that I'm looking at. It has X Factor 8 and 9, and then Cable and Deadpool 30 through 32. I really, really enjoyed the X-Men. And this was okay. Cable and Deadpool was, I mean, Deadpool's fine. I'm not a big Deadpool fan. And I'm not a big fan of Cable, really. And so that story as a whole was just not great for me. And then the X Factor, I didn't know most of the heroes in there, and other than Quicksilver. And he doesn't make a big appearance. But it was enough to get me interested, kind of. It's got Multiple Man, who I found out by looking up based on his name, because it never calls him that, but that he's Multiple Man. You do see his powers taking place, and some of the others around him. Polaris is in there. Um, you know, as a whole, I mean, it wasn't bad, but I was expecting a more impactful Civil War, and didn't really get anything that felt like Civil War. So that was a disappointment, but it was $1 when I got it. So I don't feel like I lost out because I combined it with another 10 or 12 graphic novels that are all small volumes. So I mean, shipping was probably an extra $1 on top. So I paid $2 for an evening of reading, and it was fine. The other one I finished was not the entire Lord of the Rings, but I did finish The Two Tower last month. This is a read-along that I've been doing with Steve Donahue and Tony from Erudite Adventure. Tony actually started like he normally does with Fellowship of the Ring in January, and then Steve and I kind of jumped aboard in February to read The Two Towers alongside him. And it has been a delight for both myself and for Steve. You kind of see it with fresh eyes jumping in media res, rather than going through those opening arcs. And we are rolling right into Return of the King. So this is getting into the first of what I am reading currently, and that is Return of the King. I'm almost done with the first chapter, so I'm a little behind on it, but I will be getting into that a little bit here soon. So continuing on with the current reading, I am 2 chapters in on Wolf Hall. I know, I said I wasn't going to. But I have to have something on my Kindle for when I pick it up. And I figured, you know what, I'll throw Wolf Hall on there since I have a copy of it and see how it goes. So I'm 2 chapters in. I'm going to give it a couple more. If it's got me hooked, I'll keep on reading. If it hasn't hooked me, then I'll move on to something else for the month, because I think I'm going to need light reading to go along with some of the other things I'm working through. And this probably isn't light reading, but I'm going to give it a chance to hook me, because I do want to read it. Speaking of light reading, we have a chunker here, just a mirror. This was Steve Donahue's book club pick last month, and as you can see, I failed miserably. So this will give you the perspective. So this is the top. I did not make it very far at all in this. And it was not any issue of this. The issue was completely on me. That I binge read towards the end of January to be able to start on this. All of Children of Ashenel in about a week and a half. I think that really kind of burned me out on nonfiction, because I don't read a lot of nonfiction. I enjoy nonfiction, but I read it at a much slower pace. And yeah, I think I just needed to detox from nonfiction for most of the month. So I'm 150 pages in. I will continue to chip away at it. Sorry, Steve. But I am really enjoying what I've seen so far. So this is definitely not a disappointment. But this is one that I'm going to be chipping away at. Probably not with any intention of finishing it in March, but at least making some progress. If I can get to page 300 or so by the end of the month, I'll consider that to be a win. My current set of short stories I'm reading, I'm buddy reading with Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads. We are reading the stories of The Wind's 12 Quarters by Ursula K. Le Guin. And so these are short stories, and they start with some of her earliest ones in her career. First ones that she got published and paid for and things like that. We're 3 in, being March 3rd. So we're doing one a day, and we're Voxering to just give our brief 2-3 minute thoughts on them. If you have a copy of this and want to join along, please feel free to reach out. Let me know. I'd be happy to add you to our Voxer group. I'm sure Greg wouldn't mind having more of us in there. But it's a nice pace. I think it's got 17 or 19 stories in here. So it'll keep us going through most of the month. And, you know, most of the pages are 20 pages, or most of the stories are 20 pages or less. So it's a real easy ask, and I'm not blown away by any of them yet, but they are all enjoyable as well. So I would say just a notch above the Alice in Wonderland so far, but again, not blowing me away by any means. The next one I'm reading is A Bond Undone. So this is book 2 in the Legends of the Condor Heroes, and I'm reading this because I really enjoyed book 1, which I read at the very beginning of January and binge read it, and I'm a decent way into book 2. I'm about 100 pages in out of a 500 page book. My wife thoughtfully got this for me. I can't English. Got this for me for Valentine's Day, and that was really thoughtful of her. And so I wanted to make sure that this is currently being read. And so this is one of the ones that takes top priority right now. And this is, you know, why instead of trying to push through and finish the Tuckman, I decided to jump into that one. But I also wanted a kind of a light, shorter read, because I don't have any of those going on right now. Like, the shortest one's the Gwyn short story book. I mean, everything else is, I'm sure Wolf Hall is 400 or 500 pages long. Condor Heroes is 500 pages long. Tuckman 700. Return of the King's gonna be 400. So I started reading Masters of Time by A.E. Van Vogt. This is 120, 130. Yeah, 128 pages. I'm about 40 pages in. It's just really fast-paced. The font in here is pretty good size. You can see here this would be a perfect Garbogist book right there. Because the cover, as well as the cigarette advertisements in there, you know, things like that. But enjoying it so far. It's pretty good. So I've got 2 more to show you. I have started in on Introduction to Old English by Jonathan Evans. So I've gone through, I've read the how to use this book, the introduction, the preface, all of those things. I'm ready to dive into lesson 1, which I'm planning on doing tomorrow. And trying to do at least 1 lesson in here a day. The lessons are only a couple pages long. They have translation, so I would do some translating work. So short passage, got some the vocabulary, gives some reading notes, gives me some grammar information. Come on. There we go. So you can see here some of the grammar information on there. Then historical and literary notes. Got some etymological and lexical notes. Then some exercises, some advanced reading, and advanced reading notes. So that's what pertains into a lesson. That lesson is 8 pages long, 9 pages long, something like that. So, I mean, short, bite-sized. And this is, I think, going to be far more enjoyable than, because I tried looking at my Sweets Anglo-Saxon primer, and it's like 50 pages of just dry as bones grammar, and then 40, 50 pages of things to translate. And I go to the back and look for vocabulary, and it's got some of them in there, but not a lot. And the dry as bones grammar just does not work for me. Just spitting it all out of any kind of context. Hey, here's a big list of all of these words, and here's all of the different ways in which they would go in based on, you know, the sentence structure. That just doesn't stick for me. So I'm hoping this one goes really well. And then last but not least, I am finally diving into some more X-Men. So this is Essential X-Men Volume 3. It is unfortunately black and white. I wish it was an epic collection, because then it would all be in color. But this has got issues 145 through 161, and then annuals 3 through 5. And this picked up right where I had literally left off last year. I had done a month trial of the Marvel comic book app. And so I read a handful of issues, and I had stopped at a certain point, and this picks up right after that. And so I'm enjoying this tremendously. I wish I was reading at least one a day. I'm reading one most days, and just making my way through. And I've still got a long ways to go, but I'm very, very happy to be reading this. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I want to read more X-Men. And I've got a lot of various X-Men, but I think I don't have any that directly follow after this. So I need to probably correct that at some point in time. So there you have it. That is what I'm currently reading and what I've recently read. Let me know down below. What have you been reading? I'd love to hear from you. I'm sorry it's so late on a Friday. Sorry I still haven't gotten my Two Towers Part 4 videos up. I'm probably going to just do one and talk about all of Book 4, which are the Frodo and Sam chapters. And then for Return of the King, probably breaking it down in a similar fashion where each week we're going to do about 5 chapters. I don't know how we're going to tackle the appendices yet. I haven't thought that far ahead. But I do know that those are lingering in the background. That some people will probably want to read them. I definitely want to revisit them. And other people would be happy skipping them. So there you go. There you have it. And I will try very, very hard this weekend to get that Two Towers video up. And maybe do another library tour installment. Because I've got plenty of books to show. That's an easy video to make. And part of why I haven't filmed, you can hear the sump pump still running occasionally, and for about 2 days solid it was running just almost nonstop, and so I couldn't make a video. It would have been just constantly drowned out by that sound. I didn't want to do that, so and then I just had busyness. So there you go. Have a great day, BookTube.